There you go, you got your marching orders.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. Why don't we call things to order? Mayor Kronen, would you like to offer open prayer for us?
Dear Father in heaven, we are indeed grateful to be here sitting in a council capacity for the town of Cardston, and grateful to be able to share our collective wisdom and to be able to decide how to solve the problems that might come our way. We're grateful for the congeniality of this group and for the respect we show towards each other, and hope for understanding. And this we pray for humbly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so on our agenda, one of the changes I would like to make is for our delegation. Let's move that down a little lower so that we can adjourn from the business meeting.
Put it
before we
into
get
other.
that.
Put it into other.
Yeah, if we could drop that down to other. Any other additions?
Yes. I'd like to have a review of the CCAN bylaw. And also, I'd like to have a review of the unsightly properties bylaw.
Would that be better for us to be able to have some background on prior to us reviewing that? Maybe.
If we had administration bring those bylaws forward, and then we can read them and get them ready for the next council meeting.
I think that'd probably be the best way to handle that. Yeah, so that way we don't have to deal with it here, but because some of us won't know very much detail about that at this point.
Okay.
Well, there's one of us that was here when they were passed, so the rest of us are pretty much in the dark.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask if Councillor Bengry could maybe put a request form to give us a little bit of a background of why he would like to have those brought forward? Would it be possible, so that we understand a little bit the reason?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Council.
Perfect, okay.
I would like to just add, I'll just call it traffic, and I hope it'll just be a short discussion. I just want some information on from time to time people have requests or make suggestions, and I don't know how that ever, is handled, so I'd just like to have a little discussion on.
Is that on?
Like somebody will suggest to me, why don't we put a crosswalk? Here, actually, that was the last suggestion I had, so somebody said, why don't we have a crosswalk by the post office? So I just want to, when we get suggestions like that, I just want to have a little discussion on how things like that are handled.
Councillor,
And how we can respond to them.
do you know how many hours we spend as a past council working on that?
That's okay. I just want to touch on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we could
Call that 7E.
make that 7E then, is that?
Yeah, just call it traffic.
All right. So with those additions and changes, can we get a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Mayor Kronen, all in favor? Okay. Adoption of the minutes from March 4th.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Councillor Bengry. Any discussion?
I just pointed out to administration that there are a couple of glitches in spelling that need to be fixed. Did Graham give them to you?
No, it's appropriate that those be addressed at the table so they're recorded as being changes to the minutes.
All right, so I was hoping that this would be there. Give me a chance to find them. One had to do with Councillor Bengry under CCW motion 14-10. It's a moved by Councillor Bengry, recommended. It should read moved by Councillor Bengry to recommend.
Yep.
And on the CCW motion 14-11, maybe that's for administration to help me here. The last line says to proceed to immediately hold public hearings. Are we talking plural or are we talking singular? Moved by Mayor Kronen to recommend that council refund the excess garbage rate, etc., and to proceed immediately hold public hearings. Is that
I
hearings
think
or
it's just,
hearings?
it's just the
Hearing.
grammatical part of the sentence. I don't think it
Yeah.
applies to holding multiple hearings.
Right.
So it's
Just
just
to
a
hold
way,
a public hearing.
yeah, so this is why I wanted if it should have an answer or not. That's
Or
all.
you could use the word any, like hold any public
Yeah.
hearing.
There could
not-
potentially
no,
be
a
multiple
public
if there was
It could
any
be
on that-
issues
on that
raised at
subject.
the first hearing, so I
Okay,
think it's
no, I'm just
appropriate
trying
for
to understand what it really represents. Okay, well, so there's
So with
one
that change,
amendment,
One
one
amendment.
amendment.
With that amendment, any, all in favor? Thank you. All right, 7A, municipal census. Now, I'm assuming that everybody's had a chance to read a little bit of the background around it here. My understanding is basically it's a decision whether or not we want to run a municipal census, which boils down to whether we think that we're going to have higher numbers than we did with the last federal one. Councillor Bengry?
Chairman Barfuss, I understand that we need 40 more people to pay for the actual census. Is that right, Marian?
In the first year.
In the first year?
in the first year, and that would be grant, excuse me, grant allocations is $252 per capita, so it would take that many. Now, we took this estimated cost based on municipal census that was done by the town of McGrath in the last couple of years, so they're fairly accurate numbers on the cost to undertake a census.
I know in 2006, when I was on council, we did a census, and it increased our grants significantly. How does the administration feel?
Mayor Kronen, do you want to address something first? Then we'll...
Yeah, I also consider that, but I thought that without a true ability to gauge if we really have increased by that many people, it's difficult to do it. We don't have people registered in town one way or the other. We can see it in different wards that there are people who are definitely moving in, but they're not buying new houses per se, and they're not building new subdivision, etc. They're coming back and buying houses where people vacated those houses. So is that a net increase of 40? I would love to believe that it is, but is $10,000 what we want to do when this next census is coming up in about 2016,
yeah.
which is 2 years from now? Is that really worthwhile spending their money for that?
Councillor Bengry?
But Mayor, I think we are more capable of doing a more in-depth census than the federal government. And we got to remember that our DAL up on the hill is receiving patients from out of town. There's patients up there who are become citizens, members of our town. And
Yes.
also our Chinook Foundation and Temple City Villa are both full,
Which is a good point.
you know, and so
But they would have been full during the census too.
not
Well,
necessarily.
I guess in 2011.
See, as I'm doing
That would have been full.
as I'm doing the maintenance on these buildings in Lethbridge, I see the census hanging on the doorknobs in all of these seniors' apartments. And so they're doing a very intense census, the city of Lethbridge. And I don't know.
What's administration's thoughts on this?
Well, the reason it's on the agenda is to make council aware that that's an option that you have on an annual basis. You can decide whether you want to undertake a census. I would suggest that if we were seeing rapid growth in the community, that it would be a viable option. Because we're not necessarily seeing a number of new housing starts and those kind of things, you may not see as big of impact. And that's why we undertook the census back in, I believe, 2007 was the year we did it. Because we felt that, council felt at that time that the federal census did not truly capture the growth we'd seen in the community. And it did make a difference. Now, I would suggest since 2011, we haven't seen significant growth. We haven't seen significant numbers of new housing starts. And that's one of the indicators that you would want to look at to determine. But It's entirely up to council. If you feel that it's something that you think there has been some growth in the community, it isn't being captured, then we can do that, but there's a cost to that.
What is the official, but as far as you know?
3580.
3580.
3580 is the federal.
Somewhere I was reading and it was 38, and I'm thinking, well, there's a discrepancy there.
38 is Raymond.
Raymond's bigger than us now?
Yes.
Yes.
And growing rapidly.
By the same token, we've had some apartment buildings made.
Yeah, I know that there's at least 3 new people in my rentals. How many's in the?
Well, but the question comes back, the 3 people that were in your rentals
No, they were
before you-
replaced.
Okay.
They weren't there, all new people. What's the population up there on the hill, the Lee Crest?
Lee Crest.
How many people are in there that weren't there a year ago?
It's almost full up there.
It's
That-
full,
so
and there's
have-
what, 70 people in there?
60.
98 units.
Pardon me?
Isn't there 98 units?
98
Something like
units,
that
okay.
with the cottages.
And most of those places that are up there, they've moved from other areas.
Well, they've.
There's a few that have been from our town that have sold properties, but most of them have been moved from other areas. And like I said, the Chinook's full and the Temple City Villa's full. And I was up there visiting in Temple City Villa and in a group of people, and they're all new people from out of area. They're not from here. They didn't come from properties here. They
Yeah,
came from
yeah.
out of town.
Well, that's what we see in our ward too. We see quite a few moving, visitors, they're moving from other part of Alberta or out of province.
Councillor Peavoy?
Yeah, I just have a question for administration. Explain, even if only for my sake, how 40 people covers the cost of the census. How is
That's
that?
first year.
Okay, the cost to undertake the census would be in the $10,000, $11,000 range. Our current grant structure, the portion that is based on a per capita is $252 per capita. So you would need to have enough population increase
Not to use that much.
to increase our grants enough to cover that cost was the rationale behind it.
So, and then would that take place this year, or would we see that increased grant money next year?
We would see it in 2015. So for 2015 and 2016, so you'd have 2 years.
Councillor Bengry?
What is our utility billing right now in the residential? 1,300 and something?
Number of residents?
I don't have that number off the top of my head because MX does our billing for us.
And then also it's 18 and up that we count, or is it 19 and up?
For a
age.
census, it's everyone.
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 From-
Everyone.
Man, woman, and
From the
child.
baby, from the
Wow.
baby up.
I think we need to take a census.
Councillor Creed?
I think before we commit to take a census, we need to do kind of what we're doing now, but maybe in a little more expanded version and assure ourselves that, that the people that are in, say, the DAL or other places are indeed new people in town, that they're not just relocated from other places in town. If we can be confident, that we actually will get enough numbers to make it worthwhile. Now, when you say in the first year, does that mean that we would actually make money the next year? Or like, would that,
Yes.
it would pay for
Yeah.
itself in
Yeah.
one year?
So the way I understand it is you would receive additional grant funding in 2015, which would cover the cost you expended in 2014.
Okay.
2016, you would actually have a surplus.
You would gain, okay, so, if we can, I mean, we're just kind of speculating around the table here, but, like Dennis, you're in real, say, you have a little bit of a pulse, and we all, belong to church groups, we kind of can look at maybe growth there, but I'm thinking if we can, key on some areas that we can, assure ourselves that we indeed
So
do
take a
have-
census to make sure that we can have more people in the census?
That's kind of what I'm talking about,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
The pre-census.
You bring up about the church. all you gotta do is call the ward clerks on all the different wards and see what their population is now.
Well, that's what I
Because
said.
I know they're all bursting at the seams, almost every one, and it wasn't like that 2 years ago when they made the changes.
So if, you know,
So
if
there's
we can,
something there.
if we can do some free things that, you know, that don't cost us anything and assure us, then we can go ahead and take an official
We can
census.
take kind of a straw poll until we decide.
If you got 10 new people in each ward, and there's 6 wards in town, that's 50 people.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
so that might be a good way to do it.
that's my preference on that.
We should also contact Dr. Clark, find out how many babies were born. I'm good for one. I'm good for
Then you
one.
better contact Salmons and see how many died at the
Well, yeah.
That's part of the
And
issue,
there's a
is that
school too.
when,
Yeah.
if we're not building a lot of new homes, you know, with the exception of the bigger facilities, if we're not building new homes, what's moving in is also somebody moving out. And so that's where it's not quite just so easy to look at a ward, and this ward's got 40 new people, but this ward over here has 40 less because they moved to a different area of town.
From all the talk that I get from people, every ward is bigger.
It's bigger.
And there's rumblings of splits in our state right now. So, creating new wards, so.
I agree with Councillor Creed, maybe we should take a week, maybe make a few phone calls and then
Yeah.
come up with some numbers and say, you know
I
what?
mean,
That doesn't cost us nothing.
The stake clerk would be able to provide us with a change over the past,
Yeah.
from the past.
He just has to take out the rural wards. and-
Because, they will have to take the rural wards out. But they also would be able to have a fair sense of the change, because when people move, they delete the records.
Yeah.
All the records are moved along. So that would be a true figure of increase
Yeah.
through the stakes, if we could get this much information.
Well, I can check our state.
But mind you, we got a lot of non-members living in the community too.
Sure.
Yeah, but
Sure, that's just in.
But this is just to give us kind of, it's not gonna give us a number, it's gonna give us an indication
We
maybe.
just want to kind of assure ourselves.
Yeah.
What we need to know if
So-
the actual number have changed or not.
I'm not around enough to be able to.
Now-
Because we see, as Marian say, a lot of people come in, but a lot of people depart too.
Now, can I ask a question? Our native population that's living in town, are they counted
Yes.
as town
Yeah,
residents?
definitely.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a lot of
Yeah.
those.
Had an
Yeah.
increase in
We've
the
had
last 2
an
years.
increase there. Absolutely.
So do we have a motion that we'd like to put forward here?
A recommendation.
Recommendation.
Council. Well, the recommendation to council might be to ask administration to obtain
Preliminary numbers?
further information prior to making a decision.
Okay. Does administration need some more direction during that? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
That's good.
Sure. Mormon Trail Committee Terms of Reference, 7BI. Has everybody had a chance to review this? This is, Jeff, did you want to speak to this just briefly?
It's quite thorough.
I certainly can. This is something that's come forward from the mayors and CAO's meeting. It was the intention of the elected officials of each community to have some direction on and to formalize the Mormon Trail Initiative group. The group is starting to have some infrastructure, a few things that need a bit of a body to oversee and to own and to manage and things like that. So Scott Barton put this together as terms of reference for that group.
Councilor Peavoy?
So have we looked into inviting the 2 counties, Warner and Cardston, to joining the Mormon Trail Initiative?
Yeah.
The county has been invited. I don't know about the county of Warner because that's a Raymond connection that they have spoken with them, I know. And the intent is if the county does decide to get on board with this, then we would just amend that representation on the board. But at this point, they've declined.
Who has, the county? Declined?
At this point, they have. Maybe Mayor Kronen could speak to that. She sits on the mayors and CEOs committee.
I don't really have so much further information regarding why the decline.
Councillor Bengry?
There's reference here to the Badlands tourist study. Now, we talked about belonging to the Badlands. Are we still going ahead with that?
This is something that would come out of this. Once we approve this document, and that all the other town approve that document, then it gives us the representation of one body. And what we're trying to do is to see if we can have a membership. If one town is part of the Badland, can we piggyback on that through this organization?
So it
That's
only
the
takes
idea.
one town.
Well, we don't know. We have to apply. Once all this is approved, it has to be approved first.
Because I know the cost for that Badlands was quite expensive.
The town of Raymond belongs to the Badland, and Maggie Barney is the chair of that committee. So we have a little bit of an in there, so we want to know if it would be possible to bring that as an organization, be a member
Through the organization.
through the organization.
Does the Badlands, does that include the Writing on Stone area?
Yeah.
The whole area
That's
does
all
it.
part of that. So, do we have any thoughts as far as a recommendation on this document?
Well, administration may want a recommendation to approve this document as it stands. I can make a recommendation unless you want to.
Mayor, you're going to the mayors and Reeves meetings.
Correct.
What is their pulse on this?
I would like to see that too.
They would like to see it approved?
Yes, very much so.
And like the other communities have already approved it.
Yeah. It has to be approved.
Yeah, just for information, the town of Raymond has approved the terms of reference as they currently exist.
Okay.
I haven't heard back from Sterling, just Raymond is the only one I've heard
So
back from.
what we need is a recommendation to approve.
I'll make the recommendation.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That is passed. 7C. This is the gang task force. Mayor?
I really want to thank Jeff for having put this 2 bits worth of information regarding the task force. I am interested to know, is the idea eventually to have the parents of the high school kids become informed of the initiative that is put forward? Please.
Absolutely. As I said in the background, there's a number of, oh shoot, the word just left me. There's a number of initiatives that the group's looking to take on that require some funding, and we've made an application that if we get that funding, then the school has some ambitious initiative, that was the word I was going for, that they'd like to carry forward. We have ours, like the cameras that we're looking at and a number of things. In the interim, until that funding's determined, Mr. Nunn from the junior high is working on putting together an awareness evening in the community so that it's going to have a number of just home safety and a number of safety things, this being one component of it.
Okay.
And that there will be people specifically invited that need to be there, and there will be a number of other people they hope to capture to talk about this. But the high school does a great job of, if they have children who they feel are involved, they immediately get those parents involved as well. The school's taking a lot of effort to make sure that they're getting the parents involved early. But we would like to do a general community awareness as well, and Mr. Nunn is currently working on that.
I am pleased to see that the First Nation has responded and to sit at the table regarding this problem. I'm very pleased to see that.
Councillor Bengry?
How soon do we have to know for funding
we should have known by now. It's actually, they've sent Mr. Jensen at the high school twice, corresponded with him to say that it's been delayed and then delayed again. So I'm not sure why. They haven't really specifically said. But yeah, the funding was supposed to have been awarded already, but for reasons unknown to me, it's been delayed twice, so we continue to wait.
That's great.
It occurred to me as I was reading through this that some of the programs that they are proposing would qualify under the FCSS funding. And so if this doesn't come through, there may be funding through the FCSS that could fund some of those programs or part of those programs.
Some may, you are correct, yes. And that's one of the reasons the town is at the table, is where appropriate, we have access to some of those resources for sure. We're certainly hopeful. I don't know if you remember, Council, the intent, the grant that we've applied to fund is an excellent idea in my opinion. Anything that's confiscated and sold as part of criminal activity is pooled, and then the province reissues that as in the form of a grant to address safety and criminal projects within the community. So if there was a good use of some funds, I think that's one of them. So it's a substantial grant. Our application was substantial, and if we get it, we're hopeful that can cover most everything, but no word yet.
Yeah. Councillor Bengry?
Is this for information only, or where do we go from here?
Yeah, just council asked for a report back, so.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, on to Parks and Recreation. We'll start with the swim. Well, let's do the swim club just because it comes up first on my.
Yeah.
We're reversing those around. So on the swim club fees, basically what it looks like we've been asked here is to approve a reduction from the $70 an hour to the current $55 an hour.
Can I ask administration a question regarding that? What has been the involvement of the swim pool with the fundraiser?
Sure.
Thank you.
The swim club has agreed to head up the, let's call it the grassroots, the local fundraising cause for the community. So we met with Mrs. Paula Brown here a number of months ago and kind of started the process, and we talked about different groups that the town should contact and then a list that she should contact. She's been up and down Main Street. She is soliciting donations from our Main Street and commercial merchants, and we're going to be working with them to do the residential and the citizen fundraising drive as well. They also did things like they got volunteers to run the Halloween carnival at the high school, and they're donating money now back to the pool for that, and they're doing a number of things, what they can, to help us raise money for that pool. So one of the discussions we had early on with Paula, she brought this up quite early on and said, look, is there a possibility that, you know, if we can do this work for the town and raise this money, that we could have some kind of long-term fee stability going forward and keep our costs down for the club. I suggested at that time that let's get into it and see how it goes, and then we can have that discussion.
Okay.
So she's brought that up now because they've started registration for this upcoming season.
Okay. Then in that case, can you give me a sense of how much money they are aiming for in fundraiser, as a fundraiser?
Sure.
What is it trying to raise?
So the total project is about $250,000 for the water
Right.
slides. We are hopeful of the CFEP grant from the Rotary Club, that we get half of it. Remains to be seen for a couple more months. And so essentially what we're going for is the remainder.
All right, so in other words,
About $125,000, yeah.
it's a substantial fundraiser. So what they're asking for is really a difference of $420. And so to me, it's almost, we could justify that there was small return of that sort.
Yeah, and that's why I
It's
put that in
possible.
there. It sounds substantial when you think of the rate from that to that, but when you tally it up, given that we've already received, we're probably about $30,000 right now.
Okay.
It's pretty minor for their efforts.
All right.
Councillor Bengry?
I'm prepared to make a motion that we set the fees
Recommendation.
Our recommendation? Yes, I'm prepared to do that. To set the fees at the request, $55
For how long?
per hour.
Yes.
Yep.
But-
Their request is for 2014 and 2015.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, so
The
that passes.
rest is
Small price to
volunteer
pay.
work, right?
Yes. Councillor Creed?
While we're actually talking about the swim club, or the swimming pool, I wonder if I could just ask Jeff a question or two on the finished designs. I've had people ask me about the walls around the pool, what they're going to be. There's one remaining wall. Is that going to remain, and is there going to be additional walls, and what are they going to look like around, on the north side, and et cetera?
You okay with that, Mr. Chairman? Sure. So in short, it's the intent that the wall on the east side between the laneway would stay as a solid wall. We'll probably pull the cinder block out between the pillars and rebuild it with something different. Funding allowing that, we'll see how close things get here in May. And then the north and south right now will be chain link.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they won't be solid.
No, we'd like people to be able to see in from the avenue on the north side particularly. Ultimately, on the south side, after the water slides go in, if we can find a bit of a windbreak type of a fence that still can't be vandalized or climbed easily, then we'll probably look at it. But for now, to secure the area for this upcoming season, it'll be chain link.
Okay, thank you.
On the comical side, Councillor Creed, you gotta have a wall there so the kids can scale it at 11 o'clock at night.
You'll have to have it. I won't make it well, it'll be difficult to climb over.
All right, so,
Razor wire.
last item under Parks and Recreation is the Lions Park. And I know this has been one that has been looked at for a long time. And I believe that we've made some pretty good steps here. Jeff, did you want to speak specifically to what we're asking, what's being asked?
Sure. What we're looking for here is we met, Randy and I met with members of the school division in the high school 2 weeks ago now to discuss, basically the intent of the meeting was to discuss this year's all the plans and what was planned for the parks and with usage and all that. It was a good meeting, very productive, but during the meeting it came out not from us but from the school to say, what would you guys think about leasing us the facility, particularly the track and inside. They don't necessarily want the camp kitchens and washrooms and all the other park area, but the track and inside, because that's what they use, and the baseball diamond. And so we talked a lot about the pros and cons of that for both parties. And at the end of the meeting, just basically both said, we'll take it to our respective political bodies and see if even in principle we should continue down this road and have this discussion. So we haven't put a lot of time into it from our side. We had the meeting, we came back and just said we'll come here. Oh yeah, one of the reasons why the school suggested this is they have, now I forget the acronym because it's been 2 weeks, but I want to say infrastructure improvement and maintenance dollars that they can use for all their facilities. And given the good condition of all their facilities right now, there was kind of it was basically said that they have a little bit of surplus in there, and if they lease the facility, they'd be able to put that money into it. They can't if we own it and they have no ownership in it. But if they lease it, that would give them the opportunity to, for example, improve all the jumping pits, because that needs done for the track and field program, which the town doesn't have, and the school solely uses it. And to do a lot of work on the track itself. It needs some work and some widening and edging again and bordering. And there was some suggestion that there may be some funding to do that this year, if we could work something out. Irrespective of that, we have agreed that we're going to join up our crews the first week of May and do some work on that park track with both the town and the school crews together, irrespective of if we go forward with a lease arrangement, just because some things need done. But that was one of the things that the school said. They do have an opportunity to contribute financially, but it must be under some kind of long-term agreement of ownership or possession.
Jeff, maybe you can help me understand. What is normally the use by the town of that park? I know the Power uses it. What other events are held in that park?
Sure. So the predominant user of the park, agreed to by both parties, is a school. And that's fine. They've already started with rugby. In fact, when we had that little break in the weather, they were practicing down there. And so the rugby season is upon us, and they start very early, and then baseball starts right after that. And then phys ed classes follow that and then there's a bit of a break in the summer, and then football starts up until freeze up again. So we would use it for, as you said, powwow, party in the park. And also we have minor football and minor soccer. We'll play a couple of games down there a year because they like to be able to play at night under the lights. So they have another field at the soccer park now, which is the predominant place where they practice and play. But it is a great atmosphere for especially these younger kids to have a game under the lights at night. And so they have 1 or 2 games a year under the lights.
Okay, so how would that pan out in that type of list? Would that be a restriction or something that would be as part of the agreement?
So while we haven't hammered out the details, the initial conversation with the school was we could use it for whatever we needed, no charge. That's their initial position right now. If we had 8 or 10 events a year, we just let them know when it is. I should mention too, one of the benefits for the school, and I know some of you are aware of this, we butt heads a little bit with the high school just because our timing doesn't always work out with things. They need to paint lines, we haven't mowed the grass. And we don't know when their games are because they don't tell us generally. And so one thing they're saying is, look, if we take over the mowing and the irrigation and the line painting, we can water it the night before, then mow it, then paint the lines, then have a game. You know, that they can schedule everything quite nicely because it's their resources at their disposal. And it's not to say we haven't worked through it, we always have. But generally this was just seen logistically for them to be maybe a benefit as well.
Councillor Bengry.
Jeff, if we went this proposal that the school took over, what kind of a relaxation does it put onto our parks and recreation? Does it relieve them of a lot of work?
They would mow Lions Park twice a week during the heavy growing season. After that, I should correct myself, but we don't paint the lines. The school's always had a volunteer. Councillor Barfuss can probably speak to many hours in the middle of the night painting lines.
I was one of those volunteers.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, the only volunteer.
Yeah.
Still will be.
So, yes,
There's
we
a
would
couple of
do twice a week, basically is what we've done down there.
Just to keep in mind though, it would only take the football field basically
Right.
out of our schedule.
Yeah.
We still would have the balance of
The
the
parks,
to
the
maintain.
playgrounds, the
ball
campground,
diamond.
the hill,
The ball
yeah,
diamond.
all of that, yeah.
So, could I ask another question? Regarding the funding that the school is able to access, that would help with other projects rather than just the track and field then? Would that extend to the pathway?
No.
What would it be?
But potentially, and I can't speak on behalf of the school here, but potentially, the first thing we were looking at was the track, because we have some improvements that need to be done there. We
Okay.
know that. But things like turf management and repairs of the field, potentially they would have some funding to put into that right away. Irrigation repairs, irrigation replacement, rezoning of a few areas. Yeah, lights, and also fencing, that was another thing we talked about. They use our panels to fence off the football field, they're all falling apart a little bit, perhaps we could partner up and get all new panels in a partnership, and there's a number of opportunities there. The other thing I should mention is, we'd like to see, and they would like to see some substantial capital projects down there over the next few years. And my position at that meeting was, over a certain level, we'd probably look, and they could probably look to us to still partner with them on those capital things that would endure with the park for years to come. That we'd still be a capital partner in one of those bigger projects, for sure.
Do we have any idea what those projects might be?
New scores booth with change rooms, for an example. On the ultimate goal, a turf field with a rubberized track. Now, I'm talking very large and big scale, may not happen. We were just throwing some things out there at the time.
What would be our responsibility for the playground area that?
We would
you
keep
all
all that.
We still continue to look after that, keep
Yeah.
it upkeeping and all that kind of stuff.
And I should say in principle, because we haven't determined any of that,
Yeah.
but it would be
We'd be
their
mowing that
expectation, we'd
area though,
maintain all
right?
that, yes.
Our town crew would be
Yeah.
mowing that
Yeah.
area.
So, Councillor Peavoy?
Well, just a couple of things. Do they want the ball diamond as well?
Yes, they do.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's-
Yeah, they had suggested the ball diamond because their baseball team.
Sure.
plays that.
And then, so the second thing is, right now, in our agreement with them, just so I can understand, do they compensate us for the time used, or is it just kind of a, as long as the schedule permits, take it?
Yes and yes.
What agreement?
So they can, they've never been restricted, well, yeah, what agreement is that? We have an agreement in place that it's quite old, and the whole process of this, we wanted to redo it.
They pay $2,000 a year under the current
Yeah,
agreement.
and that's for all green spaces, but we've never restricted they've always basically been first priority for use of the facility.
And then my final or follow-up question on that is, this lease discussion that you're having, does that include compensation, or?
It'd be nominal, $1.
Okay.
Would be the intent.
Right.
Yeah.
Mayor Cronin?
Well, I really feel that I would be ready to put a motion forward to recommend in principle that we pursue a leasing agreement with the school. We don't have all the terms.
No, that's part of what needs to be negotiated
In
through.
principle,
Yeah.
I think the idea is sound. And if we have the access to the park for those 3 events, that satisfies me. I
Well,
don't know
and the
how-
option to add more at our request. I mean, I think that's,
Well, because the churches use it for family day, or
Yeah.
for
yeah.
youth day.
Youth day.
In our initial
Stuff like
discussions,
that.
I don't see any concern with community use of those facilities at all. I mean, the school lets us use, for youth days, for example, we use the elementary school, or the churches do, and we kind of help coordinate that,
Right, yeah.
but we use school facilities for that,
Okay.
so.
Let's go for it.
Sounds good.
So we have that recommendation made then?
Bill's got a question just before we
Sorry?
vote on that. I just want to, clarify in my mind, then the big advantage then of letting them lease it, even if it's for a nominal amount, is that it allows them to put money for maintenance and capital projects into the facility.
And upkeep.
So that would really offset anything that we're doing now, or what would be as good or as better than than the arrangement we have now.
Yeah, I would suggest if it all worked out as intended, it's a good thing. There can be more resources put into the facility than there currently are.
Yeah.
Last question on that. Do you see any downside to this kind of lease arrangement if it goes the way you're thinking?
I suppose I could surmise some risks.
Yeah,
And those are
surmise.
things we're going to have to identify as part of this process, and we'll make sure to make council very aware of them so there's no surprises. But I think this was so hypothetical. Obviously, the school's going to have a number of them too, and we're going to have some back and forth. But there's always questions of control. There's always questions of what if they don't keep it up and we get it back in a worse condition. But I don't fear that, because their intention is for improvement for their programming.
Yeah.
So it doesn't worry me too much.
I got a question, Jeff. The irrigation system that's coming through there,
Yeah.
is that planned for this year?
Yeah, it's ready to go, I'm charged, yeah. Well, it's not charged yet, but it's ready to go.
Is that gonna cause a problem for us?
Oh, wait, sorry, are you asking about the extension through there?
Right.
No, that isn't. My apologies, that isn't planned for this year.
It
Is
is
that gonna
currently
create a problem?
connected to the community irrigation line and will be irrigated through that line this year. But the extension of that
extension
line is
isn't.
not planned because we haven't worked out those details
Yeah.
or understand whether there's a partnership there yet.
I think,
That
if I'm
did
not
it last
mistaken, I think we have some capital dollars for next year, for that next phase, for 2015.
Correct.
But we have some logistics and engineering to still work out there. We have a ballpark dollar, but we don't have it engineered.
So on that recommendation, we need to take a vote. All in favor? Yep, that's passed. All right. Councillor Creed, you had a...
Yeah, I'll just address that. From time to time, a citizen will ask me about, well, could we have a crosswalk here or something? And so I'm addressing this generally. The most recent person that talked to me just asked about a crosswalk at the post office. And he says, well, I'll bring that up. Now, what I really want to know is when these, I've had other suggestions for like a crosswalk there, by the Temple Street Chapel across to the crosswalk. And I've had another suggestion that, like put angle parking there next to the distribution center by the Temple Street Chapel. Anyway, so what I'm asking is more of the general nature. When these come up, is there someone that I should direct these inquiries to, and how can we get, a response so that we know what we're doing, or if these are approved, or how something like to be approved.
I would suggest that those questions be directed to me, and then on both of those instances, we have some background information that I can provide to those citizens. And if it's a formal request from them to your council, if they're still after that conversation, they would bring that request to council for decision. But both of those instances, there is some background information that I could provide to that citizen. And I actually believe the mayor has spoken to me to the same person.
We talked about back and forth. I will also hit up Angle Park in the distribution center, because it would increase the amount of vehicles that were able to park there.
Right. Yeah.
Because our streets are wide enough to do an angle parking on one side. In front of the distribution, now they parallel park. And I'm saying maybe we should paint an angle parking.
Well, that is what decisions the company over the years, but it's never gone anywhere. I'm just not sure.
The only problem with the crosswalk is that two parking.
Yes.
Like parking. You don't drive at the post office. Reduce a lot of parking.
Well, I know that, but I say it's I'm approaching this in a general nature so that we can be able to answer, so that things just don't through the cracks, so that we can actually respond and know that that it has been considered and we can answer.
I'd ask you should have a look at the parking and park in front of the distribution center.
Yeah. That was looked at about, I'm going to say 2 years ago, probably now. One of the concerns there is the number of angle parking stalls that you can get because of the crosswalks, and there's an extra entrance there. So you have to be so far away from those entrances for angle parking. I recall, I'll have to look at that one specifically, but the increase in parking was not substantial as compared to parallel parking currently, because of those restrictions that we have at those intersections.
We can get another
But I can look at that if that's one that council would like us to consider again. Further east from there, along the south side of the temple, we had a request from the school division to allow buses to pick up students on the south side of the temple. So to put in, and that's been agreed to, we spoke with the temple to make sure that they were okay with students there before we agreed to that. So we could put in parking there, because then those buses would be compliant, and that's how we're going to do. And as far as the post office, there's a document, a file of this, the number of times that that's been addressed.
Yeah.
It boils to really the loss of parking stalls that is already limited in that location.
Yeah.
As long as the RCMP looks the other way, we're good.
It's not the RCMP, it's Lloyd.
So at this point, what I would suggest then is that if anybody does have any further questions, that they address them to administration and give the background themselves, and then if it needs to go farther than that, then we can bring it to council. Mayor Kronen?
There is also an option when people ask us questions. I tell them now, please call the office or write a letter and send it to the town office. And you can follow up.
Yeah.
But it would be good for the public at large to know that it's more efficient if they address their question directly to the office, even if we know something about it, and for us to follow up. But the first initiative should be theirs with the town. Because the town has the answer and we don't.
You know, in regards to the crosswalks, I've had people just in the same breath with crosswalks about a traffic light down there at the corner by, what's
Fourth Avenue?
bargain shop there. It's just that on a 3 o'clock, that's a dangerous corner.
Yeah, I agree.
With all
We've
the-
got our limit of traffic lights.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Yes.
Yes, it's.
And that's a
it's
highway.
provincial
Provincial
highway.
highway, so they control it.
It's not the number of traffic lights, it's the space between the traffic lights
Oh, I
that's
gotcha.
the issue
Gotcha.
for transportation.
Okay.
Okay. So, that said, why don't we have a motion for adjournment for our business section so that we can go on to our training?
I'll make that motion.